package down but when we get to the office, it's got rings. It's got ductwork.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's the appointed time to open this meeting, but before doing so, I need to give you notice of meeting recording. Clause 91(4) of the Governance and Meeting Conduct Local Law provides the following. This public meeting is being recorded to improve access to the meeting for our community. The recording will be published and will be retained by Council in accordance with Council's legal obligations. As a visitor in the gallery, your presence may be recorded. I now declare open the ordinary council meeting of the Royal City of Wangaratta. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting. We pay our respects to their elders and to elders from other communities who may be here today. And the opening prayer. Almighty God, we humbly ask Thee to bless and guide this council in its deliberations so that one may truly preserve the welfare of the people whom we serve. Amen. All councillors are present. There's no citizenship ceremony. Confirmation of the minutes of two meetings, the 21st of November and the special meeting of the 28th of November. Someone like to move those minutes? Councillor Bussell, Councillor Benton. Any discussion? Declare the motion carried. Conflict of interest disclosures. Reception of petitions, there isn't any. Hearing of deputations, there isn't any. Council reports, there's none. Executive officers reports, corporate services. Thank you, Mrs. Murdo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is to appoint or to recommend that Council appoints a group of people to act as its rating strategy reference group. From time to time, Council calls a group of people together to make recommendations to it in relation to its rating strategy. The last one we did was in 2014. The recommendation is that Council appoints Peter McNeil as Chair of the Rating Strategy Reference Group. Peter is the former Chair of Council's Audit Committee. Part 2 is that Council appoints the following members to the Rating Strategy Reference Group: Mr. Frank Dark, Mr. Neil Taylor, Ms. Tammy Crumpton, Mr. Bruce Johnson and Mr. Simon Fraser. Part 3 of the recommendation is that Council advises the applicants of the Council's decision.
Any questions from the gallery? Councillor Benton.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move the recommendation with the additional to the name of Natasha Loveland to the part 2 of the motion. She's the President of the local Wangaratta branch.
Someone like to second the recommendation? Councillor Bussell. Any discussion? Councillor Roos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a wide range of people here to look at this rate strategy, so I think it's a great thing that we've appointed such a wide variety. It's a bit like us as councillors here, where there's a wide variety of different areas of the world that we come from, and it should do for a good review. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Motion's carried. 13.2.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report brings to Council's attention the fact that we are a vacancy in our Audit Advisory Committee. We've called for nominations to fill that vacancy and we've received 2 nominations. The recommendation is that Council appoints Mr Peter McNeil as a representative on the Rural City of Wangaratta Audit Advisory Committee for a 3-year appointment expiring in December 2021 and advises all applicants of the results of the expression of interest process and subsequent appointment to the Audit Advisory Committee.
Any questions from the gallery? No questions from the gallery. Someone like to move the recommendation? Move Councillor Fuller, second Councillor Curry. Any discussion? Put the motion, those in favour? Motion's carried.
That's 4 years, 2021 is 4 years, not 3.
You are correct, and I did note that, and I thought I had corrected it, so it should be 2020. Thanks, Anne.
So the move and second are happy with that change? Alright, 2020. Thank you. 14.1. Community Wellbeing.
Thank you. This report is presented to Council tonight as an update on the transition process that we have underway at the moment as we move from a committee of management at the Showgrounds precinct in Wangaratta to a process where Council will operate and manage the facility. At the October Council meeting, a recommendation was put forward and adopted by Council that the Showgrounds Committee would be dissolved at the end of the financial year, so at the end of June 30 next year. In our consultation with the committee post that council meeting, the committee has come back and requested to council that they actually cease operation at the end of the calendar year, so the end of December this year. So the recommendation before council tonight is that council rescinds motion 4 and 5 from item 13.2, the special committee's review from the October 2017 council meeting, and that that council proceeds to dissolve the Wangaratta Showgrounds Special Committee effective from the 31st of December 2017, and that the instrument of delegation for the Wangaratta Showgrounds Special Committee be revoked on the 31st of December 2017. That subsequent to the above, the council engages with the community and the Showgrounds user groups and involved in the development of facility allocation policy, user leases and licenses, a business plan for the precinct, a prioritisation of infrastructure development and marketing for the precinct and its facilities.
Thank you. Questions from the gallery? No questions from the gallery. Someone like to move the recommendation? Move Councillor Fitzpatrick. Second Councillor Benton. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Motion carried.
Thank you. This report is presented to Council tonight to present the draft Wangaratta Play Space strategy with the intention of having it put on public exhibition prior to final endorsement at a future Council meeting. This strategy is around Council's provision of play spaces throughout the entire municipality, so both within the urban area of Wangaratta and our rural communities. It looks at the maintenance and the future development of play spaces, as well as how new spaces should be developed in new and emerging neighbourhoods. It sets some pretty clear guidelines in terms of where and when we will maintain and develop new and existing playgrounds, and also looks at the future use and the potential diversification of uses of existing playgrounds. The recommendation before Council tonight is that Council notes and endorses the draft Wangaratta Play Space strategy, that we place a draft strategy out for public display for a period of 42 days, commencing from tomorrow, which is acknowledging the Christmas and the New Year period, so we wanted to give an extended period of time, and that Council hears submissions and appoints a committee to receive and note the further changes to the report of the strategy based on these submissions that are made before being presented back to Council.
Thank you. Questions from the gallery?
Jamie, on page 8 of the actual strategy, it refers to the ASA forum that was conducted on the formerly run poolside, with stating that there were about 38 votes for a children's botanical garden. So that ASA forum ran from the 28th of November 2016 to the middle of January 2017. There still has been no public response to that feedback from that. The councillors have made a decision to do an off-leash dog park in that area without the community consultation. And Doug did say in that forum that phase 2 would be part of the community consultation and that it would be addressed in the 2017-18 budget. I'm also aware that some of that land has been absorbed into a turning circle at the end of Raymond Street without consultation. So I'm really probably interested to know how much in depth the formerly run poolside will go into in this strategy, because it's really not addressed publicly, that one line on page 8.
Yeah. So you're right that the ASA process showed that a children's playground was one of the major priorities that came out, but there were a number of other uses for that site that also ranked very highly, including the dog park. What became evident was that that site actually offered a huge amount of potential in terms of being able to co-locate a number of different elements on the site, given the size of where it was. What we're in the process of doing now, based on the feedback and based on the diverse interest and elements that have been highlighted as being priorities, we're actually undertaking a master plan process for that site to look at what we can fit and what works best located closely together. So that's happening at the moment, and we'll be out for community comment and further review early in next calendar year, to be presented to council in March next year.
That's wonderful that there are steps in place, but it's also been piecemealed out already in decisions without full community consultation.
Yeah, so I guess what we wanted to do, we recognised that there are a number of different uses of the site that were being flagged as priorities, which is why we really wanted to stop and make sure that the master plan thinks holistically about it and comes up with the best option for the whole site, and so that we avoid that piecemeal approach.
But that's already happened. There's a turning circle going in before the end of December.
So I may need to deflect to Alan for an update on that turning circle.
Well, it's certainly not going in before the end of December, so it has to get through the mid-year budget review next week first. We are ready to go with it, so we would envisage, assuming the budget gets passed next week, that it'll be done in the first half of next year, though.
So the customer service representatives might want to be updated on that. The information that they're providing residents of Raymond Street is that it will be completed by the end of December.
And can you speak into the...
Oh, sorry. The information that the residents of Raymond Street were provided when contacting the council was that it would be completed by the end of December, the turning circle at the end of the road, through the customer service representative process.
I'm not sure when they were told that, but originally that was the intention, but when the requirement to move the old water main, the 8-inch main from the swimming pool became part of that project, we had enlarged the turning circle bit, and that meant that had to happen, and some other underground services that pushed that above the budget we had allocated, and thus it needs to go back to mid-year. So although we're ready to go, it certainly won't. So the December may have been the news to the various residents when we went out in hard copy to them, but that has been delayed.
That's fine. Thank you.
Mr. Fox.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brian Fox. Could somebody tell me what their definition is of on public display? We'll remember the fiasco of the Maloney's Arcade when the plans were never on display. And now I'm told that this plan will be on display for public exhibition. I'd just like to be enlightened what is meant by that term.
Thanks, Brian, for your question. I don't know that we've ever made a formal definition of it, but the intent is that the document is available to people to review, and that's generally via website, customer service areas, and in some cases at specific rural locations. I don't know whether we intend to put this specific document in rural locations or not, but generally it means that it's available for people to look at and review and comment on.
Thank you, Brendan. My definition of the word exhibition, when somebody tells me something is on display or exhibition, I would expect to be able to walk into the council offices, see the plans displayed, go and sit over in the corner and have a read. But that's not happening. I'm sorry, it's not good enough.
Anyone else from the gallery? I would like to move the recommendation. Councillor Curry. Councillor Beck. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Motion carried. Moving along to infrastructure services.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this report is presented to Council to consider the tender evaluation for the streetscape and drainage work in the main street at Moyu. This work consists of a lot of underground drainage, above ground curb and channel, path work, sealing of shoulders, and once we've completed our bit, Vic Roads is going to come in and put a seal over the whole road, which will give a nice even surface over the whole road through Moyu, which will just complete that project nicely. The tender, it was a bit of an unusual one in that we only got one tenderer, but that tenderer came in under our estimate, and known to us, they produce high quality work, so we're comfortable that it's good value for money, and thus the recommendation tonight, it's on the screen, but basically to award the contract to North East Civil Construction, authorise the CEO to sign and seal the relevant contract documents, and to disclose the contract price for this contract.
Questions from the gallery?
Yes, Mr Mayor. I am Bill Daunt from the Moyu Action Group. One of the things, this has been a ongoing long project, but one of the main questions is, when will the work commence and how long will it take? And the second part of the question is, when will the work be completed, allowing for the fact that hopefully the figured in wet weather, as Moyu has a major event, the Moyu Easter Escape.
The part of the contract evaluation was the timing of the work, and our requirement was it would be completed by the end of the financial year. We haven't nailed the contractor down any further than that at this stage, Bill, but we obviously need to know about your event. We can try and work around that, but the contractor is required to complete before 30 June.
30 June. Thank you, Alan. Point being, it is a major event that we have in Moyu, and also how much disruption will be to the businesses in Moyu.
Well, there'll clearly be some, because there'll be trenching work in front of businesses, etc. But it's not such an intensive site that the contractor wouldn't be able to get around most things. So no business will lose full access or anything like that, and we'll work with them to be receptive to the individual businesses' needs. But there will be some disruption. We can't avoid it all.
Very good. Thanks, Alan.
Any other questions from the gallery? I would like to move the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Russell, second councillor Fuller. Any discussion on the motion, on the recommendation?
Yep. Thanks, Mr Mayor. This is a really good project, and I think it highlights the fact that this project has been expanded from early in the year from $180,000 to much more than that. And I think it highlights the commitment this council has to our small communities. And hopefully, as the next years roll on, other small communities see work done in them as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillor who wish to speak? I can disclose the contract price as the item 3 in the recommendation, and the contract price is $559,577.50, including GST.
60 cents, Mr Mayor.
Huh?
60 cents.
60. Sorry about that, it was 60 cents, not 50. I'll put the motion, those in favour? Motion's carried. Pages are hard to turn anymore. Development services. Recreation vehicle dump point.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report is presented to Council tonight to seek Council's consideration on the proposed locations for the installation of a recreational dump point within the city limits of Wangaratta. This follows a motion that was put to Council on the 20th of June 2017. Since that time, officers from the Economic Development Unit have been working with our infrastructure team to evaluate 7 different sites in relation to a number of criteria, and some of that criteria is the location and proximity to major roads, proximity to private residences, turning space for longer vehicles, existing toilet facilities and access to sewerage and water lines, some lighting and power and road surfaces, and waste services for garbage collection. The recommendation tonight is that Council endorses the installation of a recreational vehicle dump point at Marina Park in Swan Street, and installs some appropriate signage accordingly to define the parking requirements and to direct users to the location.
Questions from the gallery? Mr Summers.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A couple of comments mainly and a couple of easy questions. I'd like to commend the council on finally biting the board and undertaking to put in a dump point for RVs, and I think the location is pretty good too. The other thing is, at the same time that the signage is being looked at, perhaps we could revisit my hobby horse of the parking signs for RVs, because there's nothing on the south, incoming south side of where any RV parking is. One of the things about it is that it won't be only people coming into town, it'll be locals who use it, and me being one of them, it will make it so much easier when you come back to go to a point and empty everything out and fill up and whatever. So that will work very well for the locals as well, because there's a whole lot of nomads around the wing. When it's completed, I was wondering what might be done to notify the wider world of the installation of this point. Now, the CMCA, the Caravan and Motor Club of Australia, they, in their magazine and have other publications that list all the dump points, and along with that, I just wonder whether another step could be taken to make Wangaratta an RV-friendly town.
Thanks, Ron. We'd certainly intend to notify those relevant bodies and associations of the dump point so that they can promote it through their electronic and written publications. We've also discussed just this evening putting an application into Google Maps to having the location added to Google Maps so that it pops up on people's app. Not sure what else is required beyond the dump point to actually be an RV-friendly town. I know there are a series of things that you have to achieve that, and I suspect we probably have most of them. Janine, who did this report, I know is familiar with those and would certainly be looking at whether that's appropriate or applicable or not.
Thank you. Sounds good.
Any other questions from the gallery? Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Rees, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Any discussions? Councillor Rees.
I'd just like to point out that this dump site was a key driver in our former councillor Ruth Amory's direction that she was going. So I'd just like to congratulate her, post-congratulate her for first putting this to the table, and it's finally taken off, so it's good to see. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Motion's carried. Amendment C75.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item tonight is for Council's consideration in relation to the submissions that have been received to Amendment C75, which is the Wangaratta Planning Scheme Review. In summary, the review proposes to change the Wangaratta Planning Scheme by replacing the existing policy frameworks and updating some of the wording in accordance with the current best practice guidelines as submitted, as produced by the state government. It doesn't propose to change any major amendments. Given that the Wangaratta Planning Scheme was last reviewed in 2006, there are a number of amendments that need to be made. There is a requirement in the Planning and Environment Act that these updates and reviews now are mandated in legislation to occur within 12 months of a new council adopting its council plan, and pretty much the review looks at how the scheme has been operating over the last few years, are there any inconsistencies, what has changed in state planning policy, and make some recommendations for future work over the next 3 years. The recommendation tonight is quite wordy and on the screen, but I will make one slight change to part 2, where it references C68. That reference should be C75.
Yes, again, just reiterating Barry's there, I'd like to make an amendment to that recommendation, and the first change would just be that council in number 1 has considered a submission to the Amendment C75 in accordance with the Section 23 of the Planning and Environment Act, and also to reiterate what Director Green has said, that it makes the change to Amendment C68 in Clause 2 of the recommendation to read, makes changes to Amendment C75. Thank you.
Questions from the gallery? No questions from the gallery. You're moving, Councillor Rees. What about the addition? No. You're moving the recommendation.
Yes, I'll move the recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Got a second? Councillor Curry. Any discussion? Put the motion. Those in favour? Against? The motion's carried. Sale of industrial land.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is presented to Council tonight to consider the Council statutory process to sell the whole of the vacant parcel of land known as Lot A on Plan of Subdivision 304059W, situated at Murrell Street, Wangaratta. Council has previously considered the application for under the Local Government Act to publicly advise its intention to sell 6 lots Since that time, the interest has been such that there have been some further lots potentially created, and council has some interest in 9 out of a prospective 11 lots. So the proposal is that we now undertake our statutory obligations to advertise our intent to advertise 11 lots for Murrell Street. And once again, the recommendation is quite wordy, but it is on the screen.
Thank you. Questions from the gallery? Anne?
In the negotiations with the future potential owners of that new subdivision, is there thought given in the regards of movement of semi-trailers, trucks through the main street? It's my understanding we have a very large trucking company already in Merrill Street, and when the highway was put through, there was Greta Road on-ramp put on for northbound trucks to encourage them to use that entry ramp onto the Hume Highway instead of coming through our main street and clogging it. Is there consideration given when making these discussions with the new prospective owners to possibly encourage them to use that northbound entry? Southbound is not a problem, but when those trucks are exiting off Muriel Street, turning right, they're blocking 4 lanes of traffic, and then we have emergency vehicles trying to access our main street, which they cannot get around semi-trailers. So possibly is that something that we could put into thought for when you move forward with this program?
Thanks, Anne, for the question. The existing intersection at Tone Road is controlled by Vic Roads at the moment. Any application that comes forward for subdivision, so further down the track, that will get referred to Vic Roads, and quite often they ask for a traffic impact assessment report, which considers what are the truck movements.
Yeah.
In terms of whether we can mandate which way a truck turns, that's something that we can't control, unless Vic Roads were of a mind to put a particular intersection in there that only allowed left turn only rather than right turn.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Fox, did you have a question?
I do. Mayor Clark, as you well know, the interest rates now at the bank are about 1.5% or lower. Are we, in the sale of this land, putting some protection in so people don't buy a piece of land just for somewhere to park their money, because the inflation will be more than 1.5%? Now, this has happened in many places with houses and whatever throughout Australia. It may even be foreign money. But I remember when we sold land down behind Bruck Mills, in some cases we asked for a deposit, and the money deposited was only returned to the purchaser when they actually put a building on the piece of land. But anyway, smarter men than me here, but I would very much like to see some protection so that land is not sold and left vacant. I thank you.
I think I'll answer that one because I raised this at an earlier meeting today, that it was my understanding back in the 80s that any industrial land that the council subdivided, there was a covenant on the land that it was to be built on within 2 years, or it was to come back to the council. And I'll be looking, when we get down the track on this, that exactly the same thing will happen with this land, so that investors won't be able to purchase it and sit on it until interest rates rise.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions from the gallery? Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Buss. Councillor Curry. I'll put the motion, there's no one wants to talk to it. I'll put the motion, those in favour? Motion's carried. Advisory committee reports.
Thanks. Mr Mayor, as is custom, there are a number of our advisory committee meetings that have been held, and the minutes of those have come up to council for noting. They are the Place Naming Committee, the Economic Development Tourism Advisory Committee and the Sports and Rec Advisory Committee, meetings through October and November, with a recommendation that council notes the minutes of those committees.
Any questions from the gallery? I would like to move the recommendation. Councillor Russell, Councillor Fuller. Any discussion? With the motion, those in favour? Motion's carried. Record of assemblies of councillors.
Similarly, there have been a number of meetings of the councillors over the course of December, November and October. They are all listed there, and there are attached copies of the notes from those meetings, and the recommendations the council receives those assemblies of councillors.
Any questions from the gallery? No questions from the gallery? Someone move the recommendation. Councillor Fitzpatrick, Councillor Curry. Any discussion? With the motion, those in favour? The motion is carried. There's no notices of motion, no urgent business, public question time. Well, both of you people have had two goes. Because it's a fairly small gallery, I'll allow one question from each, but only if there's other people after other people. I do have a written question from Jim Lewis, which I'll read. Cars, bicycles and pedestrians are all supported in one way or another in providing a service to the public. Are there any council arrangements to support the buses, and is there any measure of the relative value of buses compared with the other transport methods in the town? Jamie?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Jim. This answer's quite complex. Hopefully I articulate it clearly. So the importance of public transport, and particularly of buses, has come out as something that's a high priority for our community across a number of different processes. We heard it in the community engagement process for the CBD master plan. We hear it regularly when we look at how to work with our young people, and indeed how to work with our older people in particular who have trouble accessing privately owned vehicles. One of the things is that our public transport system, predominantly in Wangaratta, is privately owned, so we work as closely as possible with those private operators, particularly the bus operators. However, on the community side of things, we also work with a number of not-for-profit organisations in the provision of community buses that help get people, particularly to medical and health service appointments. So we have recently transferred the ownership of the Wangaratta Council bus over to a not-for-profit organisation that has facilitated a program like that. There's also a number of different traffic and parking strategies that will also look at public transport and again buses. And one of the things that we are continuing to work on, and was one of the priorities that came out of the master plan, was the promotion and the access to information around public transport, and particularly bus timetables. In terms of the measurement of the value of public transport and buses, it's quite a hard thing to put any kind of quantitative data around, but we know that it's important, and we know that from a statistical point of view, that the impact on health and wellbeing is quite significant for those people who can access public transport. So we do recognise that it's important. Interestingly, the capacity and the use of public transport for Wangaratta residents is very low compared to particularly metro areas, and certainly low compared to some of our regional city partners as well. I don't know whether that at all answered your question, but hopefully.
That answer your question, Mr. Lewis?
Can I just ask one further point, please?
Yes.
You mentioned timetables. People have been asking for timetables for 6 years, as far as I know, and yet there's probably not one timetable to be found. And we don't want a timetable that's like the railways in Melbourne, where you've got virtually thousands of bits of information. All we need to know really is what time does the bus go to this stop and which way is it going?
Yeah.
And that would be wonderful. But you can't recommend it to people
No.
unless you've got that.
Yeah, and we certainly know it's an issue. It's an issue for us as well. You know, we would love to be able to provide that information for our, you know, a number of our clients and our young people, and particularly a number of our facilities. We're regularly asked for that information as well. Like I said, given that the bus operators are private companies, our capacity to distribute that information is limited to their distribution of that as much as it is for an individual community member. So I wish I had an easy answer for us to be able to use that timetable and promote it. But the other challenge is that we know that the timetable can often change regularly, and I think that's one of the challenges in having hard copies of the timetable distributed. But
I could dispute all of those statements, but I won't. Too late now.
Thank you. Other questions from the gallery? Oh, you just turned it off.
Oh, did I? Oh, that'd be wrong. Wayne. I'm just wondering how much we're spending on Christmas decorations. Not the new Christmas tree, which is spectacular, standing there all by itself in the square. Are there other decorations going to be put in the square? And are we buying any new ones for our streetscape? The same old bows and stars, I notice, are back again. And I've lived here a long time, and I keep seeing them each year. They're getting a bit faded, and some of them have lights on in the night time, but others don't. So are we budgeting for some new ones anytime soon?
Well, I did reply to your email today,
Thank you.
but I'll ask Jamie to answer your question.
thank you. And we have also drafted a letter that you will receive tomorrow as well that has a bit more detail in it than the Mayor's email back to you. So we did an audit of the Christmas decorations last year because we're in absolute agreement with you that the ones that we have are very tired, and the current stock is looking a bit old and tattered. So we did, in this year's budget, have money allocated to purchase some new decorations. So the new Christmas tree and the wish sign that has been installed are part of that suite of Christmas decorations that have been purchased. We also have Christmas banners that are to go up on the light poles that are throughout the CBD. Unfortunately, there has been a bit of a hold up with one of the components that goes onto the flag pole, but we have had word that it is here and they will be installed on Thursday, the Christmas banners. So the reasons behind that was that there's been a bit of a influx of people throughout Australia ordering these particular components because of the Commonwealth Games coming through. Everyone's ordering flagpole components for banners, so there was a bit of a undersupply, but ours have arrived and will go up on Thursday. Next year we also have a proposal to purchase some more Christmas decorations that will expand the stock and be able to allow us to retire those old Christmas decorations for good.
And the figure in our budget was $70,000.
That should brighten up the town. Thank you.
Mr. Farrell.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I believe the CBD is being treated badly by this council, and I mean very badly. I put in a letter, request, call it what you may, about some conditions in Eli Street. I got an answer back telling me the matter was now closed, and it gave me an explanation that I don't agree with. So it won't be closed. Tomorrow I'll open it again. I believe the tree that was put in the square, for whatever better name you want to call it, is in the absolutely wrong place. The tree should be where it gets maximum community participation or visible to the maximum of the community. Sitting down there, I know you had 400 people there the other night, but I reckon those 400 people haven't been back. And about 2,000 people would go up Reed Street every day. And you've got 3 roundabouts you could have put it on. Or you could put it on one of the nodes, like the one in front of the National Bank. But to put it over there is just terrible. And then to buy a sign, I shudder, I wouldn't want to ask how much it cost, with the word wish on it. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish the council would clean up the CBD. There is 2 trees, one each side of the wish sign. And one of the gardens on those trees has got an agapanthus planted in it. One agapanthus. And then there's a whole lot of weeds. I planted the agapanthus 3 years ago. I thought somebody might have got the message, but they haven't. Anyway, to finish off, Mr. Mayor, I find that there is, through the information in the Chronicle, that we have somebody going around and inspecting the bins to make sure citizens like me are putting the correct stuff in the correct bin. Well, that's the council inspecting me. Who is inspecting the council? Who is going round the CBD checking? So I'd like that person who's looking in my bin to go around and look in my street as soon as possible. I think it's terrible, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coles.
So, thank you, Brian. I might just clarify the point around the location of the Christmas tree in the square. One of the reasons, and we did do some conversations with some local business owners and also some of our members of our advisory committee around the best location for it. And one of the places, or one of the considerations that people wanted us to make, and we certainly agreed with, was that people would be able to take photos around the Christmas tree. So we wanted it to be somewhere that was safe and wasn't going to be a distraction for traffic, that wasn't going to block local businesses given the size of it. So, and also given that we want to build on the activation of the Riverside Square and really start to use that as a key community activation centre. So that was the reason behind choosing the Riverside Square.
Thank you for the explanation, but I've got to say to you that having a Christmas tree in the city is about giving the shoppers a warm and comfy feeling when they come to shop. There are no shoppers down where it is. Thank you. Give me a forklift and I'll move it tomorrow.
Obviously don't talk much about these meetings. I actually think that the Christmas tree is in a good spot. I think there's been a lot of work down there on the river. I think Wangaratta's river, the Yarmouth River, is a key fundamental to Wangaratta, and with the work that we've done there, the central part of it, we probably have missed the mark, and as Jamie's explained, we have missed the mark this year with some of the Christmas decorations, but we're working strongly towards it. There's a whole plan there. I believe the councillors are going for a walk next week to see what the vision is for that the council is working on. There's a lot of work going into this, but I actually think that where it's located is a very good spot. It gives plenty of people to go down there and celebrate. It gets it to enjoyment. I think the decorations would put a festive sort of feel to all the shops and so forth, and we do have a little bit of work to do there. But generally, I think it's quite good. It's definitely on the right path.
Any other questions from the gallery?
You're allowed a second question, Mr. Mayor?
Anne?
Oh, sorry, I didn't know if that was Anne.
On a completely different theme, I would like to congratulate the council on something. The agenda papers are being presented in a slightly different format with a link to the attachments in the agenda, and I would love to congratulate whoever is putting that into place, because it does make navigating the agenda papers a lot more simpler. So thank you for taking our criticism on board that we've been making for a couple of years now and making it a bit more user-friendly.
It's a little girl sitting over there with the glasses
Well,
on.
thank you for adding the little links into it, because it does make it quick to be able to refer to attachments. So thank you.
Thank you, Len. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Anne, for being positive on that as well and congratulating us. Not often we get that kind of kudos. Thank you.
Yes, Ron.
Ron Summers again. Just on the agenda papers and the minutes and what have you, is any serious consideration being given to actually stop wasting as much paper as what seems to be, to me, with the margins and the double spacings and everything? I reckon you could cut the amount of paper in the agenda paper by about 20% if it was had a close look at the formatting of the document.
Thanks, Ron. We have substantially reduced the paper that we use with our agenda by simply reducing the number that we print. As you'll see, many of us actually work completely electronically, and we have significantly reduced the number of agendas that we actually print out for people. We use a specific software program to produce the agenda, and I don't know how easy it is to change some of those settings around margins and spacings and things, but Evelina, who you just heard congratulated for her work on the agenda, is there, and I'm sure she'll take note of your suggestion and do some investigation as to whether that stuff is easily modifiable within the program.
That's why I thought I might just raise it right now while she's on a roll.
And I know Evelina is quite conscious about the paper that she uses on the agendas and is reluctant to print agendas, especially for the ones that we have at the council meetings, because she doesn't want to print them off, but we understand that sometimes when people arrive, they like to have an agenda in their hand, and I look around and I see quite a few in people's laps.
I'm one of the guilty ones because I like a printed copy, but then I can't see the board behind me. I'll give you one more, Mr. Fox, only because
I appreciate the generosity, certainly.
and I hope it's a question and not a missile.
Absolutely. My question is about the swimming pool in Swan Street, sir. I want to know what money is being spent to advertise the business of running the pool. The pool was open and there was no sign at all to say it was open. And after 3 days, I got in touch with council that there's no sign out the front to say you're open. And suddenly it appeared the sign that we've had for 4 years that I got council to buy that says open. And sir, it is stuck in a supporting piece of steel for an electricity pole. I ask you, where is the budget? Where's the advertising? Where's the promotion? You've got my list of 10 points of economical promotion of the pool. Council chooses to ignore me. But I won't give up. I thank you.
Brian, can I just make the point that because we may choose not to agree with you isn't equal to ignoring you. We all receive your regular emails. I think mostly they're acknowledged. And the fact that we don't immediately implement the things you ask doesn't mean we're ignoring you. It just may be that we don't agree with you. If what you came here tonight wanting to know was what is the budget for marketing, had you submitted that in writing in advance, we would have had someone look up that figure and have it here available to give to you. As it is, we'll take it on notice, we'll go away and find out what the marketing budget is and we'll let you know.
You'll probably find, Brendan, that that list the council has had for, I think, 8 years, and I keep on bringing it up. The things I want to do, sir, are so simple. I just want to pick up the bike rack and put it inside the pool. so the kids can bring their bike in and they can watch it. They don't have to leave them outside the pool. I want one of those floppy men on the roof, so when they switch the light on, the floppy man goes. If you have to say open, you are not promoting what is open. You've got to have some razzmatazz, and you don't have it.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Nothing further from the gallery? Before declaring the meeting closed, we do have a special meeting next Tuesday evening at 5:30 or 6? At 6. To one of the things that the council have to do is we have to have a budget review within 6 months of the beginning of the financial year, and that would normally have come to this meeting, but we weren't prepared to bring it there. We wanted some more discussion on it, so we have a special meeting next week just for that budget item. But on behalf of the council and the staff, thank you all for your attendance, your participation in council meetings in the last 12 months, and may you have a happy Christmas and look after your family over the festive season. And thank you very much. I'll declare the meeting closed at 6:56.